So today, we're going to dig into a pretty wild story in aviation. It's about how one of India's most punctual, most reliable airlines just completely fell apart. We're talking about a total operational meltdown.
I mean, just picture this for a second. It's basically every traveler's worst nightmare, right? You've got your bags packed, you're all set to go, you walk into the airport, and you just see a sea of red on the departure screens. This wasn't some hypothetical scenario. This was the reality for thousands and thousands of Indigo passengers.
And we're not just talking about a couple of flights here and there. Nope, this was a massive wave of cancellations that just swept across the entire country, turning these busy airports into scenes of pure chaos and frustration.
To put a number on it, we're looking at more than 200 flights getting hit every single day. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, This was a full-blown system failure.
So, this really is the big question, isn't it? Indigo literally built its entire brand on being this machine of precision and on-time performance. So how on earth did that system just suddenly and completely break down? Well, we're about to find out, and you'll see how the very thing that made them a powerhouse also became their greatest weakness.
All right, let's start with what everybody saw first. Just absolute chaos on the ground. This was the most visible symptom for sure, but the real disease, the actual problem, was running much, much deeper.
You had major hubs like Delhi and Mumbai seeing up to a third of all their Indigo flights just thrown into disarray. Internally, you had these urgent messages flying around, begging for standby crew. And of course, on social media, passengers were absolutely furious.
But here's the thing. This wasn't just a scheduling problem. The real issue was hidden deep inside the planes themselves. We're talking about their engines.
So let me introduce you to the Pratt & Whitney PW1100G. This is the engine that powers most of Indigo's modern fleet of Airbus A320neos, and, well, it turned into the absolute epicenter of this entire crisis. And the flaws here were really serious. We're talking about powdered metal defects, basically tiny contaminants in the alloy that could lead to cracks under all that stress. This was causing turbines to wear out way too fast, creating very real risks of metal fatigue and even, scarily, mid-air shutdowns. It forced airlines all over the world to start pulling these engines for urgent, unplanned inspections.
And this number really shows you the scale of the problem for Indigo. At its worst, about 15% of their entire fleet was just sitting on the ground, unable to fly. So the airline was trying to run a full schedule with fewer and fewer planes available. Not a good situation.
Okay, but here's the real twist in the story. The engine issue wasn't a surprise. Pratt & Whitney had been sending out warnings, regulators had set deadlines. So if Indigo saw this train coming down the tracks, why weren't they prepared? The answer, it turns out, is baked right into their business model.
All right, let's peel back another layer of this onion. Indigo's entire business, its whole identity, is built on this philosophy of extreme, almost fanatical efficiency. It's exactly what made them so successful, but it also contained the seeds of this very crisis.
And this really shows you the two sides of that coin. On a good day, when everything's running smoothly, using your planes constantly with very few spares means high profits. But when things go wrong and you have no spare planes and no extra crew on standby, just one small problem can trigger a chain reaction that brings the whole system crashing down.
There's a perfect way to think about this. Imagine Indigo as this high-speed, super efficient race car. But here's the catch. It's a race car with absolutely no spare tire and no brakes. So when one thing went wrong, there was just no way to stop the crash.
So let's recap. You've got a chunkier fleet grounded, you've got a business model with zero room for error. What happens next? All of that immense pressure gets transferred onto the people trying to keep the system running, the crew.
And for the crew, it was basically a perfect storm. Constant last-minute schedule changes were leading to serious burnout. At the exact same time, new, stricter regulations came in that actually reduced their maximum flying hours. This created this deadly loop. Fatigue led to more people calling in sick, which led to more cancellations, which then put even more pressure on the crew that was left.
And this is it. This is the moment it all comes together. The mechanical flaw in the engines, that super fragile business model, and the human burnout crisis, they all peaked at the exact same time. The system had no more flex left in it. It was ready to snap.
It was a simple, brutal domino effect. The faulty engine started it all. The lean model meant there was no buffer, no safety net. Then, crew shortages created a whole other crisis. The tighter regulations took away that last little bit of flexibility. And
Boom. The entire network just broke.
Oh, and there was one final factor that made everything 10 times worse. Concentration risk. See, over 80% of Indigo's planes are from the same family, the Airbus A320s. So when that one family had a critical engine problem, it didn't just affect a portion of the fleet. It threatened their entire operation.
And the cost of this whole collapse was just huge. We're talking millions of dollars in lost revenue every single day, massive payouts for refunds and compensation, and maybe worst of all, the devastating loss of passenger trust, something they had spent nearly 2 decades building up.
So after hitting rock bottom, the obvious question is, where do they go from here? How does an airline even begin to recover from a crisis that strikes right at the heart of its core philosophy?
Well, the road back is a painful one. It means doing things that go completely against their lean model DNA. Things like grounding even more planes just to create a stable, reliable schedule, adding buffer aircraft and crew, and dialing back on that aggressive plane usage that got them into this mess in the first place. Basically, they have to stabilize before they can even think about growing again.
And this all leaves us with the ultimate question. This crisis has exposed this fundamental fragility in Indigo's model. So will they learn from this? Will they evolve and build a more resilient airline? Or is this the moment that marks the beginning of the end of their absolute dominance in the Indian skies?
If you found this deep dive interesting, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We bring you these kinds of in-depth stories behind the headlines every single week. Thanks for tuning in.